An interview with Dr. Richard Vagnino, TRIDENT Open Science Practices and Partnerships Core. Tell us about your TRIDENT research work.
So my current research is focused on trying to understand interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary collaboration. So, in particular, Jackie and I are trying to figure out what factors lead to the success or failure of these kinds of collaborations and what kind of benefits emerge from them. So, like, why are they so important to science?
What is the most exciting part of your research so far?
The two things that have been the most exciting for me so far, one of them has been like getting to understand the diverse backgrounds and interests and perspectives of the various HQPs who I've interviewed. So I've been doing a lot of the semi-structured interviews with various trainees across all the labs. So that's been really interesting and exciting. And I guess sort of second to that, it's been really interesting and exciting to get sort of a front seat to a lot of interesting and cutting edge science.
What are the real-world implications and application of your research?
I mean, I think this work has important implications both for policymakers and funders. So, for instance, it's obviously important to be able to predict which collaborations will succeed and therefore, which ones should be funded. But I think it's also important to the participants in these collaborations. I think, it's an important goal for us to be able to give some sort of practical feedback on how sort of potential and ongoing collaborations could function in a manner that will make them, the most efficient, produce the best results, give them the best chance of, working together fruitfully.
What are some of the challenges you have observed in your research?
I think one kind of interesting challenge that I didn't totally anticipate in advance was just that a lot of the existing literature on collaboration tends to really focus a lot on these big sort of unmitigated successes, which makes sense. Obviously, if you're going to do a case study, you want to pick something that, you can tease out some really sort of dramatic lessons from. And, big successes are sort of one of the best way to do that. And you end up with these kind of idealized pictures of what collaboration looks like. And that's great. And you definitely get some interesting takeaways from that. But our goal is not just to understand, the conditions that lead to success. And that's part of our goals. But it's also to understand what are the potential pitfalls, and to really do that in a case of these real complex and in this case an ongoing collaboration. So that's really kind of a tricky methodological challenge, because our work uses both these historical case studies and it uses a contemporary case, obviously, and we're bringing together lots of different streams of sort of evidence. Some of it we're collecting these semi-structured interviews and then case studies. And so it's tricky to try and figure out how to synthesize those. And I think what we've been trying to do is both seek out less idealized case studies, and there are some of those, but also be cognizant of the limitations of the more idealized examples that we have looked at in the literature and that we're putting our current work in conversation with. So trying to sort of synthesize all of those.
What significant discoveries or insights have you discovered so far in your research?
I think we have made some strides towards developing an interesting and I think novel framework for thinking about some of the unique kind of epistemic benefits that might arise out of these kinds of successful interdisciplinary collaborations. And I think we've also maybe begun to put our finger on some subtle and interesting challenges that I don't think have been clearly articulated in the literature so far.
What is one key takeaway or message from your research?
One key takeaway, I mean, I think that these kinds of collaborations, one, that they are challenging. Again, I think if you looked at the literature, sometimes you might think, if everybody comes in and they all sort of have the desire to work together, that things just kind of will naturally work themselves out. But it's tricky. It's hard to bring so many different people with so many different backgrounds and expertise together. So I think one key takeaway, I think, is that it's an ongoing and an active process. People have to be engaged actively in both trying to sort of coordinate the way that they're working their actions together, find ways to communicate and understand one another. But that it is, I think, worth it. Again, it's tricky and it's difficult and it requires, I think, constant ongoing recommitment to collaboration, but I think the benefits make it worth it.
How do you see your research contributing to the advancement of knowledge in your field?
Adding both a sort of richer and more complex picture to what collaboration consists in. Um, I think hopefully, providing models that maybe, again, the idealized cases are useful in some respects, but hopefully we can sort of give a picture of um, a really rich and complex collaboration that's kind of on the ground and ongoing. And so I hope that, yeah, that we can add some sort of depth and richness. I think also, adding a collaboration that is rooted in the life sciences and in neuroscience. I mean, some of the um, you know, canonical examples in the literature from physics. And so, yeah, so I think hopefully both expanding the range of cases that people have looked at and also providing a more nuanced and sort of rich picture of what actually it goes into, what it really takes to make this sort of collaboration work.
Can you tell us a bit about your educational background and how it led you to this
Yeah, I
research?
have a sort of um, unusual or unconventional sort of, I think, path to this particular type of research. So my undergrad was in history and music, and my master's was in music as well. And towards the end of that, I sort of became interested in music cognition. And so that sort of led me to change direction after my master's. I knew I didn't want to do a PhD in music. And so I ended up taking some graduate level coursework after my master's. So I did graduate level clinical neuroanatomy and philosophy of mind and philosophy of cognitive science, and some other graduate level work. And then um, ended up doing my PhD in philosophy and cognitive science at UCSD. So I think the combination of kind of history and cognitive science and philosophy um, made the move to kind of study interdisciplinarity and collaboration a kind of natural one, because that's, again, a lot of the work that I've done, a lot of my training has been pretty interdisciplinary in nature.
What advice would you give to trainees exploring pathways in academia?
The work that I do is very practice oriented philosophy of science, but I would say generally also for people, out not just in philosophy, but in the humanities in general, or the social sciences who do, history or social studies of science. I think really spending time with people outside of your discipline, and especially if you're planning on doing this sort of work with scientists and studying science, then I think really, if possible, like joining a lab either as a participant or as an observer, I think is really helpful, because I think it can be really tempted in especially for philosophers, we like to read a lot of books and papers, and we like to sort of really kind of engage at the level of theory, but to really understand kind of how the sausage gets made, you actually just have to spend time both in those environments with the people actually doing the work and seeing sort of what it looks like when they really do it. Um, I mean, I really feel like it's a lot like spending time in another culture, another country. Like it's one thing to, read about it or to, learn about, do a Duolingo course. It's a totally different thing to actually be immersed and actually sort of become conversant in another language. And in this case, I think if you're going to do work that tries to seriously understand and engage with science, you have to really immerse yourself in it in the same way you would immerse yourself in, another culture or language.
How do you maintain a good work-life balance? What do you do for fun?
I have a couple. I mean, I still play and write music. Actually, doing some recording, some retracking of some guitars that I recorded with a band when I was back in San Diego, where I did my PhD. So I still try to do music stuff, write, record. I love karaoke. It's a sort of everybody in my family loves karaoke, so that's another thing. I don't do it as much as I probably would like to, but I try and squeeze it in. I play pickleball pretty regularly. My wife and I both playing a lot of pickleball. We actually used to play a lot of pool too in San Diego. We were both part of a pool league. Have not found a league in London yet, but still try to get out and play a little bar pool every once in a while.